Good morning, everyone. Right before lunch, so hopefully we're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I was here today to talk about 3 success stories for data visualization. It's something that's become quite popular over the past few years. Popular because we're seeing results from the use of visualizations and dashboards within schools themselves. We're going to take a look at I think we'll have time to take a look at 3 stories today, 3 success stories that I've gathered from some of our clients and just schools in general here in Pennsylvania itself. We're going to take a look at some who have put behavior programs in place and track their progress and the results they've seen so far. We're going to take a look at another success story where they've improved learning environments with some focused attention on positive behavior. And we're also going to take a look at how a school district here, MPA, has put together a dashboard and visualizations for dropout prevention. Okay? Those are the 3 success stories we're going to take a look at here today. I think we're going to see some common elements and characteristics of these dashboards and visualizations and what they were trying to accomplish, which is something that you could go back to your own districts and put in place a dashboard of visualizations either like these or to repeat their successes or ones that you may have your own ideas for. The first one we're going to take a look at is from Susquehanna Township Middle School here in Pennsylvania. We're also going to take a look at Albert Gallatin North and South Middle Schools. The focus there is interesting, and I'll share a little bit more as we go forward. We're going to take a look at some success at an alternative education school, a organization called Adelphoi that goes in and delivers classes within schools or surrounding school districts in their area and how they improve the learning environments. And then we're going to also take a look at some of the something interesting I found that South Middleton Area School District did here in Pennsylvania under the leadership of Dr. Al Moyer. So one of the things for Susquehanna Township Middle School is that they, specifically Ken Edwards, who's the principal of the middle school there, went on a path of changing the culture of their school, went on a path of changing the culture of their classrooms, as well as an improvement in their child's behaviors. One of the things that they did specifically is focused on PBIS, which is research for positive behavior intervention system, okay? Some of you are nodding your heads and you're familiar with something like this. They actually, in terms of visualizations and dashboards, they actually use a combination of 2 different tools to do that. Some for, depending on the audiences themselves, some for the parents and the teachers, as well as another for staff members, all to really track the progress for their programs that they're putting in place. And what they use essentially is something that's called Classroom Dojo. Has anybody ever heard of that before? Yes? Okay, great. I was very excited when Ken shared with me his program last year it was at the middle school, and the excitement from the teachers and the students themselves. And really what it focuses on is rewarding kids on positive behaviors as a role model for other kids, so they behave in a certain way and improve their learning environments. And so teachers, as well as administrators, they look at these metrics showing how many positive behaviors or the sum of the positive behaviors within the classroom itself. The higher the number, the happier and more successful the program is within that organization. For Classroom Dojo, it's a series of actually kids picking their own avatar, teachers actually using an app and giving them points for their positive behaviors. They use these in the classrooms themselves, and they have graphical representations of good behaviors. There's a lot of peer involvement for the kids, and it certainly is improving the learning environment, the positive environment for the classrooms as well as the floors and the schools themselves, if you think of it that way. Another thing that they use from a back-end standpoint is they take a look at the metrics that they're able to collect or they normally collect within their student information system. And so typically what we're recording in a student information system are the negative things, right? The things that the kids do wrong, whereas the Classroom Dojo is recording the positive behaviors. And so as they see that other graphic go up, where they're having a higher percentage of the positive behaviors, they're tracking from the back end, if you will, the negative behaviors, and that those negative behaviors are going down. So there's a relationship between the two. And so they can get some insight on that, on their data by looking at it from both perspectives, okay? I wanted to take a moment, if you will, to show you a little bit more for another tool for the positive behavior or the PBIS type of system. These are all dashboards that Susquehanna Township Middle School created themselves with a tool that looks at their data K-12. But there's another a tool that could also be available that I thought you might enjoy seeing. One of the things that we've done, because we've seen so much success with this kind of a program already in the past year, is that we started to look at ways of consolidating the data so that when the administrative teams review on a regular basis the metrics that they're looking from the infractions themselves, that they have a conversation that can start on the pieces that the PBIS focuses on most. And so essentially with this this dashboard here, it's a little bit more graphical. It's meant, this thing right here, I can easily see that because of this dark color and this large area here, that this infraction of agitating students is the biggest issue that's going on in the building within the middle school itself. Does that make sense? Yep. And I can see what the second or is smaller and smaller of the issues that are going on within the school itself. Down here, I have a graphical representations of those behaviors as well. I can look at actually, if I were in the software itself, I would be able to look at the actual detail behind it, meaning the infraction descriptions itself and what percentage and how many occurrences there were of that. All things that are needed for this research for the PBIS, the location, the time that these infractions are occurring, all things that an administrative team would be able to take action. Is this something that's school in terms of interventions, if you think of that? Is it for the entire school? Maybe it's for just the second floor, determining on the location. Or the time of day, interventions could be put in place itself for improving and tracking the progress with this type of a program, the PBIS program, I mean. They can look at specific schools, and so it's a very interactive way of viewing the data, and just essentially a different way. None of it's wrong, right? It's a matter of taking a look at the data that gets you to the conversation quicker than otherwise. Okay? Anyone seen stuff like this before in terms of behavior? Yeah, great. Have you found it helpful?
Yeah, we decreased our behaviors for the second year of PBIS by over 70%.
70%?
Over.
Yeah. Are you at Susquehanna Township Middle School?
No, Penn Hills Charter School.
Penn Hills Charter School.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Great. 70%. Pretty big drop in behaviors. And when you have kids that are not acting up, essentially, they're learning, right? They're learning at a faster pace, at a more quality level than they would be if there were disruptions constantly in the classrooms. All right. Another success story that I can share with you here today is dropout prevention with Albert Gallatin School District. Under the leadership of Dr. Carl Bizek, he wanted to affect this change in his district itself. And he was mostly worried, as this district always is, about a kid that's like this, right? The kid that physically is frustrated with their progress in school or whatever it may be. And what Dr. Bizek decided to do is he decided that he was going to surround that child or children like that with supports, with the principals and the assistant principals and the like. They had limited resources though. So they put together a team. Joetta from the Albert Gallatin North Middle School, another principal from the South Middle School, assistant principal, guidance counselors flanking her left and right, and some lead teachers that are all involved with weekly meetings for identifying kids that are struggling in school. Specifically, the research here you probably have heard about during this particular conference is the early warning system from the Department of Education. It's something that we support as a company and have from a student information perspective since 2014 and help them do that. And we have 30, 40 schools, districts that are using this type of a dashboard that we're going to take a look at here in a moment. The problem with not having a visualization tool or a dashboard is that kids don't always look like this when they're struggling, right? They may be acting out as class clowns. They may be just keeping up appearances. And there's a lot of things going on in a middle school student's mind at that age. There's a lot of peer pressure. And these are the formative years for things like English and math that build the foundation for their education all the way through to 12th grade. The research shows that if kids are not showing up at school, or they're behaving at a certain level, or they're not performing well enough in those foundational classes like language arts and math, that they have a 70% chance of not graduating high school, okay? Which is pretty strong when you think about it. And it's certainly a task or a goal that all districts should take on regardless of the tool itself. And so what they employed was the early warning system. And with the early warning system and intervention catalog, it's fed with data for grades, behavior, attendance. The ABCs essentially is the early warning system, folks call it. And right here you can see at a glance that in terms of the indicators in those areas, and we'll get into that in a moment, whether or not the percentage of kids that are failing one or more indicators, and it seems like there aren't a lot that are failing two or more, three or more, four or more, or five or more. So this isn't terribly bad here, but you can see at a glance how well they might be doing. Anything green is good, anything in red is bad, anything in yellow or gold is a cautionary zone, if you will. As you would scroll down here in the dashboard itself, you would see that there's looking at the percent failing, and there's an attendance rate. Oh, I guess my mouse doesn't show there. Attendance rate, behavior, both state reportable offenses and just offenses within the school itself, and then the percent that's failing language arts and mathematics. So you get a quick sense of how you're progressing through the goals that have been set at the district level for these schools. Specifically, this was a North and South Middle School. And you can see off to the right, there's a more button here next to each of them, and that gives you an important capability that often is referred to simply as drilling down on the actual students. So if I want to know who the kids are that are failing 14.6% in mathematics, I can drill down a little bit further than that, and I can take a look at those kids. Because I'm not running the live software here, I have some screenshots here, so I think it's logical enough for folks to jump through. So I have a section of the screen I was just looking at, and I would have clicked on that more, and you could see that I have an option for student list. And then it gives me a list of those kids that are matching this failing metric here, right? So as a team, as you're getting together, that group that's surrounding that young lady that was on the screen a little bit earlier, they get together and they can see who the kids are that are failing their research-based metrics, right? And they can see in one place, it's pretty powerful, that Tara Abbott here, she's failing one metric. She has two metrics that are caution. 3 interventions have already been assigned, and I won't talk as much about those, but you can imagine what they might be. It's telling me summary, high-level information so that the group could have a conversation about what to do about this child that's in danger of failing. She's got an 89.2% attendance rate. Her mathematics grade is a 46, and her language arts grade is a 62. One's in red and one's gold because one's approaching failing, right, and the other one is failing. The arrows going both ways, they're indicating that there hasn't been much change in that grade, right? If it was a number or a grade that was going up from previous days or weeks, if you will, it would have an up arrow, sort of like the absences here. It's not showing any change, so I don't know why it's showing green. And off to the right, there's 5 grades that are below a C, and we can't see far off to the right that talks about the number of grades that are in caution of failing. Okay, so we can see here for our Tier 2 and Tier 3 type of interventions that we can get down into a student rather quickly with a tool, a dashboard, a visualization tool, like we have with PDE's early warning system and dashboard. The resources that Albert Gallatin School District has are low, as they are for most of our LEAs, right? And so a tool like this specifically highlights and identifies those kids that are failing those research metrics. So these kids are flagged automatically. I don't have to go and look through 1,700 kids to figure out which 5 kids need help, right? Which is the real key in something like this. And so when I select that child, you can see that she has this red flag. No secretary had to put that in there. It's there because of the research itself. I can see here that she has a couple interventions already, and here's more detail that I can even get more from as we drill down in these weekly meetings that they have for these kids that are flagged. Okay? Now, the real power that we've seen so far with the early warning system at Albert Gallatin Area School District, one is that the cohort, the beginning groups that they looked at when they first put this in place 2 years ago, they have not made it out of middle school and flew through high school to graduate or not graduate, right? So we don't have results yet for something like that. But we do have results of we're tracking other things, right? We're trying to improve their learning environment with behavior, trying to make sure they show up at school. And one of the things that they've seen right off the bat so far is the fighting incidents that they have from the prior year has gone down 73%. I mean, who wouldn't want less fighting in their schools? Kids get scared. It's a disruptive to the lessons that are being taught that day. Their student code of conduct dropped 30%. Those are just overall infractions themselves. Harassments and intimidation, down 13%. And minor altercations, down 60%. That's a lot of change in behavior within those 2 middle schools that improve the learning environment for those kids. Okay? So that's some information that I want to share in regards to Albert Gallatin School District and their use of a visualization tool from PDE, which happens to be free for the early warning system and intervention catalog. I personally have been to the governor's mansion and asked to speak to my competitors, other student information system companies, to convince them to feed the dashboard as well, so that not only the 80-some school districts that we serve in Pennsylvania, but that whoever serves the other balance of that 501 districts that we have here, all those companies, that they too can serve it, so that everyone in this room could take advantage of an early warning system as well. Okay? Many of them have signed vendor commitments to feed the early warning system intervention catalog. Okay. The third success story that I wanted to share with you is about the Adelphoi Education Group, where they provide education to alternative ed students. They're actually in southwestern PA, like Albert Gallatin Area School District. They have a number of sites that they operate from, and it's really small groups of students that are being served in these classrooms throughout other districts is essentially what they're like, a mobile teaching team that goes out. Is anybody familiar with Adelphoi? You are? Okay, great. Under the leadership of Rebecca Costello, She's the chief operating officer there. And for about the past 4 or 5 years, she's been using visualizations and dashboards to help them work through a program that's also focused on behavior, right? That is under the direction of, I don't want to get the gentleman's name wrong, his research, Joseph Kowaleski from IUP University, put together a research team to help prove their metrics and the program that they put in place at Adelphoi Education. Because the staff, essentially, it's really left up to the teachers because they're the ones that are out there working in the schools themselves. They had very specific expectations that were described to them, that at the end of every single class that they have to enter their referrals, because Rebecca and her team, they're paying attention to these on a regular basis. They're feeding their dashboards on a regular basis, and the information, the accuracy of that information was paramount because of the remoteness of the classes and the teachers themselves, and they're very much focused on getting that data into the system. So the teachers would use whatever their student information system is to enter their referrals and their information so that it would feed. At the time, they've actually used a couple different visualization tools. They fed pivot tables and Excel sheets, and they would work within these teams. And today, it's much more automatic. What they focused on specifically that I thought was interesting was a lot of student information systems essentially have incident counts, the infractions. How many times somebody brought a squirt gun into school or inappropriate behavior or displays of affection, whatever that may be, right? And really what Adelphoi Education did is they looked at the highest level of occurrences or infractions themselves within the schools. They identified the ones that are the most that most affect the educational environment of the kids, but they also looked at the number of individuals that were involved in all these incidents. Because sometimes 25 bad incidences may come from one kid. And that's something they discovered through this process of using visualizations and dashboards, that they can focus in maybe on an intervention that deals with the entire class itself, but sometimes and oftentimes it's just 1 or 2 kids that are the focus of their interventions that improve the environment for all the kids in that classroom itself. So the uniqueness, I think, with their program here is that they focus on the number of individuals, not just the incidents, which is what's very common and most common within any student information, having that extra, the way or the ability to count kids that are getting in trouble for any given infraction provides a different insight that they found, okay? And so they looked at stuff in regards to infractions, as well as individual students within classes, and a larger overview of discipline metrics for their schools, or their sites as they would call them. When they do identify those kids that perform the most egregious and the highest number of incidents within the schools itself, and then they're getting into their interventions that are specific for their child, and they're looking at what kinds of things that they're doing wrong. Here's an example of one of the metrics that they take a look at. But they're also taking a look at when it occurred during the day, the instructional day itself, which they have found to be very valuable, right? So that they can focus in not only the classroom itself, but what may be going on, what other things that they can associate with the time of the day itself. Okay? They have done this for the last 4 or 5 years, and Rebecca shared a graphic with me in regards to their results. After the first year, that's how far their serious infractions dropped. That's half. That's a big drop, a big improvement in the classrooms that they have going on. And they really have to stay on top of it because they have very transient populations. The kids are moving in and out of these classes, even though they're small, I happen to know when they shared with me their enrollment records, they have a lot of influx of kids come in, they go back out of their programs, back in, back out. And so they really have to know about these kids very early on so that they can not punish them out of an education, but to put interventions in place that improve their education and just as importantly, the education of the kids that are around them. Okay? Are the things that I'm sharing making sense to the group? Yes? Okay. Is it too elementary for everyone, or is it good to see some examples of success? Great. I only talked about 3 success stories, not that South Middleton Area School District is not successful as well, but when I met Dr. Al Boyer under his leadership, one of the very interesting things that he talked about to me was that in a prior job as well as the career that he has at South Middleton Area School District, that he focused very much on key performance indicators, or KPIs. And usually that's an acronym that's most frequently used in business, not so much in education. But he, and off of their website itself, they have the research that his KPIs are based off of. What he needed to do, though, when he came into leadership, is he needed to get the rest of his leaders on the same level and dependence on dashboards and visualizations, right? And so what he did, which I thought was very interesting, and the reason why I wanted to mention it here today, is that he said to each leader, each administrator of each building, what metrics do you feel that are important to you? And each school came up with their own metrics. Some of them are similar, right? Attendance and behavior, but others, went all the way down into benchmark tests from their assessment software that's part of their metrics, right? Here at the high school, graduation rates, or attendance and discipline, and then on the next slide I think I have graduation rates and post-secondary plans. All data that we might have in our systems, but something that the school board can track progress, right? They themselves, as the leader of their buildings, can track their progress as well. They started off doing this with pivot tables again and the like, and now they're using a real-time kind of a dashboard visualization tool to transfer these kinds of metrics and others to their programs and the leadership they have going on there at South Middleton Area School District. Okay. Some of the common things that I found that as I was researching and finding some of these success stories in dashboards is that a lot of them were research-based. That sort of takes not that everything has to be research-based, but it takes the guesswork out of it. If someone says to you that if these things are happening with children, that they're going to have a 70% chance of dropping out, or if that kind of a thing is powerful, right? And if you can find a way to pay attention to and to create interventions for the identified students, you're going to have an outcome similar to what the research found, right? The research, we know that the PBIS type of systems have been around for a while, or that type of research, but that happening at the Indiana University of Pennsylvania, certainly with the early warning system and dashboard and intervention catalog, is all research-based. That happened to be based on 10 years of data and analysis out of the Philadelphia School District, if we want to just bring it back home here to Pennsylvania. One of the things that I was going to show you is about 2 minutes of a video that we have on our website that we did with Susquehanna Township Middle School. And the principal there, Ken Edwards, and the teachers and the guidance counselor, talking about how effective and the usefulness of a visualization or dashboard is, because it establishes a common language, right? How many times have you been in a meeting and it's just consumed with 30 minutes of a 45-minute meeting agreeing what the terms are that are being used and whether or not the data behind that is actually accurate? It's a waste of time, right? And so one of the things that Ken Edwards says at the Susquehanna Township Middle School is that it establishes a common language amongst the staff members that are identified for the leadership team. It also focuses the conversation, right? a good dashboard isn't all the data that you have. If you just think of a student information system like MMS, we have like 80 tables if we get down to the tables themselves. I mean, who could consume that much data across that many systems that are part of a SQL database? A dashboard is only effective if it has a clear purpose, right? And that it's focused on a specific area so you can track the progress, you can assess the results, and you can take action, which is the important part. Regular review of data. I saw that at Albert Gallatin Area School District. They get together on a weekly basis to review the results, the early morning dashboard. It's a tool that they use. They don't walk in with folders and jumping to different screens. They just work within the early warning system for their student assistance programs. I talked about how Rebecca at Adelphoi Education, that they expect teachers to enter that data in before they go to their next classroom because they're already analyzing that data on a regular basis with how transient their population is. Okay? Our Director of Services, Patrick Grace, he was at Susquehanna Township Middle School, and he talked about how exciting it was to watch them sit there and use the administrative metrics and make decisions about the type of interventions they were going to do and at what level, if it was going to be a tier 1, tier 2, or a tier 3 type of intervention. And the strategies that were going on, the conversations were all focused on the solution to the problem, not so much common language or conversations about things that have nothing to do with the goal of the dashboard or visualization. And that finally, that the dashboards themselves should be easily, at a glance progress is essential. That you're able to quickly see if you're doing well or not, right? We see that in terms of pie charts and bigger sections for the positive. We saw that in the Classroom Dojo for the positive nature of that. We also saw that in terms of the green and the yellow, or the gold, I should say, and the red that we saw within the early warning system, right? Are all things that I see across all of these visualizations and dashboards as I was doing my research for this presentation itself. Okay? I thought it might be interesting to sort of see if anyone in the room has any items to share regarding their dashboards. Are you doing dashboards at all or visualizations? Okay, we got one. I know that the young lady here from Penn Hills Charter School does. Yep. And you do a PBIS like Susquehanna Township? Do you use the Classroom Dojo?
So what we do is, that's a supplemental tool that we use.
Yep.
We had a severe behavioral problem whenever I came in there. I mean, it was not okay. And one of my special education teachers said, you see this PBIS thing and this alternative school I used to work at, I don't know what's going to happen here. Administration said, okay, go get trained, bring in somebody. So we paid the consultants, we've been in it 2 years now, it's completely changed the school building, and so what we use is our own data and our own interfaces. So, and what we focus on is tier 1 interventions for the class, because everything else is RTII, tier 2, tier 3. So we do tier 1 interventions there. We take a look at referrals by teacher, by student, and location of referrals.
Okay. Some of the things that we saw there. Yep.
Correct. And we analyzed that data. Our IT made some program that allows us to take a look at the data and input it and then give us these nice little pie charts that we can see where those referrals are coming from and who it's coming from, the teachers it's coming from, and the students that it's coming from.
Right.
And then we use PBIS. And we use something called a behavior chart. It's a level 0 to 10. 5 is average. But we use the Pause Dojo. It's one of the ways that they can, if they get 2 or 3 positive dojo points, then they can move up 1 on the Eagle Buck chart. And the Eagle Buck chart, it correlates to money, school money. And so then they can buy stuff. We have a school store on a cart, or every month we have incentives. So sometimes they'll decorate cookies. Sometimes we'll get pies in the face. Right. So it all depends on the incentive for that. Yeah.
And it's worked out well? Changed the culture of your school?
It changed the culture of the school completely.
Absolutely. I love to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, sir?
I work for an intermediate unit. And
Okay. Which one?
Westmoreland.
Westmoreland, okay. I'm in Pittsburgh, so
Okay.
close. Yeah.
Yeah. And we run a alternate ed school. So they were just trying to track behavior with Excel spreadsheets, and it wasn't working very well.
Okay.
It wasn't really even Excel. It was Google spreadsheet, so that at least they could share the data. But it just was too cumbersome, and I looked at it and I said, we can do something better. So I wrote our own student information system. So
Wow.
I added onto it a behavior module that and it built a dashboard of the behaviors by teacher, by period, by course, and in each metric that they examine the student, they rate the student for each behavior for each class.
Nice.
And it's working out well.
Are you seeing some results? Are the administrators seeing results from it?
They're very happy with it.
Great.
I'm not directly involved with the student part, but they're very happy with what they're getting.
Right. So one of the obstacles, I think, with any kind of a dashboard or visualization is how that beast is being fed, right? So I even gave some examples where originally they were using pivot tables and they were collecting data and somebody was keying in that data into Excel sheets. You just mentioned the same. And to remove that obstacle, I think, is pretty powerful, right? To have near real-time data. We talked about how Rebecca does it immediately after each class. She has her teachers do that so that data is reportable. It's something that they use to make decisions on. So, anyone here want to do a dashboard or a visualization? You do? Okay.
We're actually investigating different products to see which ones we want to use. We're sitting here looking now at Power School, which
Yeah.
is what we use, and this isn't yielding any information really. And maybe it's just the way we have it set up. I'm not sure.
So something like a student information system, right, isn't a visualization and dashboard tool, right? They may have something like that and something that you want to take a look at as.
Have you heard of Hero? Has anyone used Hero?
Yeah.
No.
I have not, but
Tools that we're looking
yeah.
at.
Yeah. Other feedback or comments that folks would like to interject?
I have a question.
Yeah,
I don't know if this is the right form. The early warning dashboard is free?
it is. Yes, from the Department of Education. Our taxpayers' dollars paid for it. Yep.
But I understand a lot of school districts do not use it, so I'm wondering why. Is it easy to use? I don't know.
Yeah. So we talked about one thing with this gentleman here, right? I used his point to share that how a dashboard or a visualization tool gets fed is pretty important, right? And so one obstacle is that if a company that's not, MMS decides they're not going to build the exports, if you will, and the automated feeding of that beast, then the LEAs that have that company that's really not partnering with the state or yourselves can't have that dashboard operate, right? That's why I mentioned before some of the work that we did in our leadership role with the early warning system at the governor's mansion, convincing them to commit to doing that. And I think there have been a couple more that have been added on. Most of the districts in the early warning system are with, my company, our company, Computer Resources, MMS for schools, and that system has been feeding the early warning system for the past 2 years. And we too have our own, visualization and dashboard kind of a tool, not to compete with such a service like that, because before when we talked about the audiences, right, that Susquehanna Township even has, they use Classroom Dojo for the audiences of the students and the teachers for those positive results. They use apps on their phones to give the positive rewards to help build that up, but they also use a visualization and dashboard tool for that back-end piece. But that's for the administrative level, not for the drill down early warning system based on that research that we talked about a little bit earlier. Okay. So,
Can I counter to what you were saying too? My administration didn't want to give any more data to a public dashboard like that. We give the state enough, and we just didn't feel like we wanted to hand over discipline data and things like that that are outside PIMS.
I can share that the data is not kept in the same silos as the eScholar or PIMS itself. That it's kept in its own silo, and the loading of it is automatic, right? It just happens in the background, but it's kept separate. Part of the memorandum of understanding is establishing all of that privacy of your data. They can't go in and look and compare the data that you're loading up on a daily basis here with the data you're loading in PIMS. It's kept separate
And I get
from
that,
it.
but
Yep.
it's trying to get superintendents to understand and get them to realize that as well.
Right.
You were really waiting to see an eSchool SunGuard customer
Okay.
latch on to the early. We're an eSchool customer, and we just haven't seen anybody successfully get latched on to the early warning.
MMS. Yeah, we did it 2 years ago,
Okay.
a little over 2 years ago. We actually provided the state as a partner, a leadership partner with them. We provided them with a sample database, not of someone's real data, but of like Mickey Mouse, all that kind of stuff. But it had real data associated with it, real hairy and scary enrollment stuff from very like a large representation of data itself, so that they could work that out. We worked through the specifications for the initial loads. Right? This doesn't make sense from any student information's perspective, so we lent them our experience in that area. We built those, and then we took advantage of their web services that actually just runs every night, scrapes, uploads it, and drops it off. And I shared at the governor's mansion that it took our company about 22 days worth of work from inception, development, use UI type of interface, and a testing standpoint, right? We've enhanced it a few times since then to support changes that came about, but they certainly, every company in Pennsylvania that was there at the governor's mansion, and there probably were at least a dozen of them, I shared that kind of information with them, in the type of investment that was involved. And so in some ways, it threatens someone's revenue models, right? In some ways, it threatens money that they could make otherwise, so they don't really want to support it. I don't know who they is, and I've even forgotten the SIS that you talked about, but I hope they all come on board, and more of them do. I know that some others have signed their vendor MOU that is committing to the state that they're going to build those interfaces. So I hope yours does as well, and I'd be happy to talk to any principal in that company to share the same thing I did as a private conversation with them. Okay? All right. Use me as leverage. Certainly use your superintendents as leverage in strong-arming your vendors to do the same. But whatever you do, I think it's a good idea that you think about the importance of visualization, you think about the importance of a dashboard, some of the common characteristics that we talked about here today through our success stories, and put something in place to start changing and affecting the environments in which your students learn. Okay? That's about all I have for you today. All right, is that okay?